Hello and welcome to Growing in Uncertainty. My name is Tess Miller, and through my seminar and coaching business, Wings Unfolded, I help people who love what they're doing but they're not sure where it's going. I make these videos in large part as a way to reflect on any of the stuck or uncertain places that I'm going through in my life. And my hope is that as I share what I'm experiencing and what I'm doing to break through my various experiences of being stuck, that it will help you to get clarity about how you can get unstuck too. So in that way, we are growing in uncertainty together. So this week has been quite a bit busier for me than usual. I'm getting ready to do a couple of events that are centered around my book, the book of Stuck. And as I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, I realized, maybe you could talk about the book. But also I wanted to share with you what my experience has been in this process of writing the book, going from being really profoundly stuck to not feeling stuck really at all, and getting that clarity that I needed to make some decisions about life directions for myself. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk to you today about the book of Stuck. I know that is probably backwards. Maybe not. We'll see. Stop holding yourself back and start moving forward. This is a book that I did write over the course of the pandemic. I didn't really plan it that way, that's kind of the funny part. I'll be reading in a little while the introduction to my book, so you'll get a better sense of how I got the idea for the book. But first I wanted to talk about the title. The title of this book came out of actually a silly idea that started when I was a kid between me and my sister. And the idea centered around this one radio station that we would always listen to when I was a kid growing up. I grew up in the 80s, and this radio station, it was a top 40 radio station. And in the 80s, they played what was top 40 for the 80s, mostly. Sometimes music from the late, mid 70s would kind of sneak its way in there too, but for the most part, it was current. But as I grew older, it seemed like the music on this particular radio station stayed the same age. And you know, when you're a kid and you're getting into the newer styles and fashions, music that doesn't grow with you tends to start to sound a little dated or stuck, if you will. And that's kind of that's the nickname that my sister and I came up with for this kind of music. We called it stuck music. And I think another reason that name for this, what we created as a genre of music, it also came out of that feeling that I think a lot of teenagers have. A lot of teenagers can feel stuck in their own way. You know, they're kind of stuck between feeling like, well, I'm not a kid anymore, but I'm not quite a grown-up either. They want independence, but at the same time, the idea of responsibility can be overwhelming. And I grew up in a small town, so it really felt like I was stuck in a small town with nothing to do. As a teenager, I remember feeling a lot like, nothing would ever change in my life. It was just going to go on and on like that forever. And I just couldn't wait to get out of that little town. So, those elements of how I was feeling at the time really colored the way that I heard this music that reminded me of my childhood. It just felt very stuck. So in this book, instead of using nice little quotes at the beginning of each chapter, what I've done is I've taken a song that I consider to be part of that self-proclaimed genre of stuck music, and I use a song from that time period that reflects what I'm going to be writing about in the chapter. So it just kind of adds, I hope, a little bit of fun. If you want to go and listen to that music as you're reading this book, you can. It doesn't necessarily add or detract anything from the information. It's just kind of a fun little biographical element about me, I guess. So anyway, that's where I got the title mostly. So the theme of being stuck basically followed me from high school into college, because what happened was that I never really settled on what it was that I really, really wanted to do with my life. Music was always a big part of my life. I was very involved with my high school band, and I did summer camps that were music related, and various competitions, and music performance just really meant a lot to me. But I also really enjoyed learning about history and psychology, and because I'd never really pursued either of those, I didn't know what it was like, whereas I knew exactly what music was. I did end up majoring in music, and what I discovered about myself is that once I start something, I have a really hard time stopping. So I ended up with a doctorate in music performance, and I always questioned my career path. Despite the fact that I kept enrolling and going to school for music and kept building up my experiences and performing and teaching music and all of that. That was all really well and good, but over the course of that time, I always questioned it. Is this really what I am meant to do? Is this really what aligns with who I am and the body of work that I want to accomplish over the course of my lifetime? And there was always something that was a little bit off about it for me, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. And since I couldn't put my finger on it, I just decided, well, I'm just going to keep going with it. And, in some ways, I did feel stuck on that career track, because once you get a doctorate in something, it's really hard, it's really challenging to say, well, I'm just going to walk away from that now. That didn't feel right to me either. There were aspects of my career that I really, really loved, but then there were other things that just really brought me down. So sometimes it was hard to reconcile those opposing experiences within my field. And I kept rationalizing it like, oh, everybody has those experiences. Everybody has a bad day. And I would just keep explaining it away, as you do. And, what ended up happening for me is that I built up my career, and at one point I was teaching at 3 small private colleges, a community music school, playing therapeutic music at a hospital 2 or 3 days a week, playing with an orchestra, freelancing, and still feeling like I hadn't really made it. I hadn't really proved myself in the musical field. Proving it in my mind and my belief system back then would have been getting the gold ring of gold rings, a full-time job with benefits and with a salary, maybe with tenure. That was what I kept telling myself I really needed to really, prove myself in the musical world and establish validity in the musical world. And so I kept working and acquiring jobs in order to create that feeling of, yes, I've made it. But what ended up happening for me instead was I hit a wall. and that wall was burnout. Career burnout for me was a very emotional experience, but it was also a very physical experience. It felt like having the flu 100% of the time. I felt very physically, heavy. My body ached. My mind was very slow. My, emotions were very heavy. I had a lot of pain in my heart and in the pit of my belly. And it was at that point that I realized that I needed to actually take a look at this. I needed to stop running away from the idea that I was actually keeping myself stuck. I realized that I'd been fighting being stuck because I knew if I sat in stuck that I might not get out. What if I don't get out of stuck? That would be horrible. And then where would I be? So I'd been running away from this for a very long time. But surrendering to being stuck and admitting that I was stuck was probably the healthiest choice I ever made in my life. I decided to let go of some of my work. I decided to just take my time through it and not push any of my thoughts or feelings away. I allowed myself to go deeper into the full experience. I let myself really, truly feel everything. It was not easy. But after resting and allowing myself to do that, I could finally get clear about why certain elements of my career didn't feel right to me. I realized that the way I was doing my career up until that point was that I wasn't acknowledging all of my gifts and talents and strengths as a person. And that was really frustrating to me. It was very stifling to me that I wasn't honoring the fact that I love writing. I wasn't honoring the fact that I love personal development and I love helping other people become aware of what's holding themselves back, which ultimately is what led me to become a coach, and go through a coach training program so that I would be able to use those strengths in my life as well. So getting unstuck, as you can see, really took a lot of work. I had to recognize how my beliefs were preventing me from embracing all of me. I had to get out of the thought and emotional loops. And I had to allow myself to admit that, I had to admit what I actually wanted rather than what I thought I should want. And that's a really, really big step to take. We can create all kinds of reasons, believable reasons why we should want certain things. And it can get to the point where it feels like, oh yeah, I really do want that. But in reality, it's just a should. You feel like you should want that, but that's not really what you want. So once I could admit that, I could have forward motion again in my life. But the other really important thing I had to do was resolve the blame I directed at myself for making certain life choices, and also the shame that inevitably bubbled up at the same time. And, we can often get stuck in our thoughts, in our emotions, in our body sensations. I've talked about that a lot on these videos. And I've shared a lot of ideas through these videos about how to get out of those loop states. And one thing I noticed for myself in that process is that oftentimes I'd get out of those loop states briefly, but it wasn't enough to get me out completely. Like I would get out of it, but then I'd fall back in. I would get out of it and I'd fall back in. And a lot of therapists and well-meaning friends or family would ask me things like, well, what would you rather do? Or what would you rather be experiencing or feeling? But because I'd been stuck for so long, getting out of that energetic vibration of stuck was like trying to get out of quicksand, actually. Being stuck actually felt normal to me because I'd been there for so long without realizing it. Being unstuck was a completely foreign concept to me. I didn't know what unstuck was. I didn't know what forward momentum felt like. I didn't know anything other than what I'd been experiencing up until that point in my life, up until that burnout point. And so also that wall of blame and shame was so high, I just didn't even want to face it, understandably. Who would? Who would want to look at, well, I blame myself for being on this path for so long, and I blame myself for feeling the shame, and I blame, it's not fun. But, once I could see that the only thing that was holding me back in my life was actually me, then I could start to see, those aspects of myself that were holding myself back, and also to start letting go of them. Letting go of certain aspects of myself was kind of like letting parts of myself die. And whenever there's any kind of death, there needs to be a grieving process, right? That grieving process isn't necessarily a picnic either. The grieving process, I knew on some level I couldn't really start unless I got to the point where I had no other choice but to go through it. So it's from that standpoint that I wrote the book of Stuck. It's directly from my experience of being stuck, and also my experience of being a coach and learning different tools on how to navigate stuck. And, my hope is, or my intention with this book is to provide others with a gentle way of working with being stuck, a way to view stuck as an opportunity rather than the enemy that must be avoided at all costs. I tried to keep the book a little bit lighthearted. I share a lot of personal stories, and I provide a lot of writing exercises that people can use to get clarity around their thoughts, their feelings, getting a little deeper with past experiences or stories in their lives. And it gets people to begin to envision what unstuck might look and feel like if they're not sure what it would look like or feel like. So I want to read just a little bit of the introduction just so you can get a sense of what my writing voice sounds like. The introduction, like I said earlier, instead of quotes, I use song titles at the beginning of each chapter or section just to kind of give a little, element of focus for the section. And the song that's associated with the introduction is Stuck on You by Lionel Richie. After completing my certification as a professional coach, I started to feel excited about the opportunities staring me in the face. It had been ages since I wasn't feeling paralyzed by depression and that I hate everything feeling. Just when it seemed like my moment in stuck would be coming to an end, I fell almost immediately back into a hole. If you've ever been licked by the flames of burnout, you might know what I'm talking about. Imagine the joy of feeling excited about experiencing forward motion after being stuck in a proverbial traffic jam, only to see another traffic stop ahead. Although I had once again ignited my passion and energy for career growth, I found myself staring at a new kind of paralysis. It was the "where do I start?" obstacle. I could feel the opportunities surrounding me, but I didn't know which direction to go first. So I did what many do when they feel stuck. I did the dishes. I went for another walk. I definitely had to fix that thing that needed fixing for the last 6 months, but managed to go unfixed because it was never the right time. In other words, I avoided getting started. And deep down, I knew that the reason I wouldn't get started was that not starting meant I couldn't fail. I was, after all, trying to do something new with my career, and although new was exciting, it was also uncomfortable. One night at approximately 3:33 a.m., my time to wake up and contemplate the mysteries of the universe, or why I did that thing in the second grade, I suddenly downloaded an idea. I will write a book about being stuck. No, not just stuck, all lowercase. Stuck, all capital letters. And in the process of writing this book about being stuck, I will get myself unstuck. And I'll have a book to share with others who also desperately want to get out of the clutches of stuck. Note that stuck in this book is a verb as much as it is a noun. It can also be a state of being, a landing point, and a call to action. But it need not be a way of life. Although I say I downloaded this idea, I didn't really. All credit goes to my friend Kirsten, for whom I owe so many fond child and adulthood memories. And now I have her to thank for this book. Here's why. One day, back when we were 10 or 11, Kirsten and I suddenly found ourselves utterly bored. It was a terrible discovery. Neither one of us wanted to part for the day, but we had no idea what to do. Everything had been done, and nothing sounded fun or exciting. We resorted to a discourse on how bored we really were. We came up with a plethora of comparisons. For example, I'm more bored than when I have to go to the fabric store with my mom. We described the feeling of boredom, and we surmised that we might be so bored we might feel that way forever. After spending a good 20 minutes doing this, Kirsten suddenly said, "I'm so bored I feel like I should have a diploma." I agreed that we had both earned some credentials in mastering the feeling of boredom. Having way more computer skills than me, Kirsten decided we weren't just going to talk about needing diplomas of boredom. We were actually going to make ourselves some diplomas of boredom. For the next hour, probably less than that, but I was still on kid time back then, so it felt like an hour, we created diplomas. It took a while to format it on the computer and choose fonts and whatnot. Kirsten printed a diploma for each of us. We even found a bit of blue ribbon to attach because nothing says achievement like a bit of blue ribbon on a piece of paper with fancy-looking words. After all the other shenanigans we concocted over the years, this moment clearly surpassed all of them in brilliance. Arriving back in the present moment, where this book began, I decided to repurpose that childhood memory and combat my stuckness by writing a book about being stuck. Yes, there is a diploma in this book for you, because you might as well start out feeling like you've accomplished something because you have. As we will discover, there are many causes of stuck, and there are many ways to get unstuck. Stuck is a space that allows us to see what we've accomplished so far. We're invited to rest and rehabilitate in our moments of stuck. We can then prepare for the awareness of all of the options and opportunities that we might not see yet, but will make themselves known very soon. Stuck is the equivalent of your computer's cursor getting itself into the spinny rainbow wheel of death mode. We all know that the worst thing you can do to your computer at that moment is to start pressing all the buttons. That just confuses it more and makes it want to quit altogether. Why would your brain be any different? If you start trying to do a whole bunch of things without resting and reflecting a bit, stuck will become like quicksand. And we all know what happens in the movies when characters get trapped in quicksand. The book of Stuck is divided into 3 parts. In the first, titled Ready, we'll establish what stuck is, how to recognize it, the causes, and how to sit with any discomfort. In part 2, titled Set, allows you the opportunity to reflect on your stuck story, to see the benefits of stuck, to release what's holding you in stuck, and to give you an opportunity to see your life in a different light. The final part, titled Go, provides you with the opportunity to really step out of stuck and into the space of forward momentum. My intention with this book is to help you achieve clarity about your experience of entanglement in your web of stuck. I will discuss the tools I learned or created from my journey to uncover where you are in your stuck process. The writing exercises are designed to reveal what you need to process and perhaps release before getting unstuck. You will then be able, that's my cat, Ophira. Thank you. Yes, thank you. You will then be able to decide on action steps to get moving forward again. Above all else, I hope this book is at least fun, because nothing is worse than being stuck and devoid of joy in your life. While this book keeps things real, it also keeps things light. You get to decide how deep you want to go. Who knows, maybe this will finally be the path to enlightenment you've been seeking, or perhaps it will just be another book to add to your collection. As this book has a workbook component, there will be opportunities to write your way through this process. So find a good pen and a comfortable spot to sit. And I'll show you on this page here. This is the diploma that you get right away. You can sign it and everything. So that is the introduction to my book. And like I said, there are lots of places in here to write and to reflect. So if you are interested in getting your own copy, if you're local to St. John's, you can come to the Briggs District Library this Saturday at 11 a.m. and you can attend a workshop I'm giving there. We're going to try out some of these exercises and talk about this book a little bit more. Otherwise, you can find this book on my website, www.tess-miller.com. Or you can find it on Amazon and get free 2-day shipping if you like. Whichever way is fine by me. I thank you so much for your support. The holidays are coming, so if this is something that you think someone in your life would really benefit from, then by all means, send it off to them. I hope that it truly does bring help to whoever might need it in your life. So I hope this resonates with you in some way. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm always so grateful for your presence and to hear any feedback that you want to share with me. Please like or share these videos with your friends and family. This is how people can find me. The more likes and shares and subscribes that I get on my social media, the more the algorithms will guide people in this direction. So if you think more people should know about this, please, please, please subscribe, share away. It really means a lot to me. And you can stay tuned on any of my updates on Facebook or LinkedIn under my business name, Wings Unfolded. You can also find me by name, Tess Miller, on Instagram, and also on YouTube. The playlist for these videos is called Growing in Uncertainty. And if there's something that you'd like help with in your life, a life transition or someplace where you're feeling really stuck, please feel free to send me a private message. I'd love to help you with anything that you're experiencing in that. And remember that it's okay to be stuck, but you don't have to stay there. Have a really fantastic week and take care.